Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing FCS2 box installs on brand new boards, brand new blanks. So I don't think I've ever said it before, but my shaping bay I actually share with a guy named Justin House, and he makes house surfboards. So we've got a couple of his little Grom boards that we've got to put boxes in and eventually get them fully laminated and ready to go. He's actually in England at the moment, so that's taken the pressure off me a little bit, and I'll leave his Instagram in the description if you want to check some of his boards out. So the one we just looked at is a little 4'9" thing. It's tiny, but like I say, these are both Grom boards, and this one here I believe is a 5'6", so again made for grommets. They're going to be pretty light glass jobs on these ones, and both of these are going to have 3 fin boxes. So this one we're looking at now will be a thruster, and the other one is a 2+1 setup. Justin usually routes out for the boxes himself before I get my hands on them, but he was a little under the pump before he went overseas, so I've been left to do these ones. So the first thing I'm going to do is just check his fin markings with the shaper's square. Just because he was under the pump, so I don't want to be routing the hole if the fin markings are off. The fin markings were all good, so no dramas there, but always worth double checking for sure. So a quick little stock take on what we're going to need. We need our router jig. We of course need 2 or 3 fin boxes, but I've only put 2 there. We're going to need a laminate trimmer, and we're going to need our FCS2 router bit, and the thing that I didn't put in this shot is dummy fins. We're definitely going to need them. Okay, on to the crucial bit. So our router bit is in our laminate trimmer. We need to set our depth. So on these FCS2 boxes, there's a little flange that sits on top of the box, and by the end of the process that's going to be sanded away. So we need that to be higher than the board, but ultimately we need the box to end up sitting flat. So setting our depth here, we're using the router jig as well to do this process because we need to account for the thickness of that router jig, and we also need to account for about 1 mil to 2 mils of resin that'll be beneath the fin box when we install it. So we want our router bit to be, so let's call it 1.5 mil higher than the box is sitting on that jig now. So if you look at this final image here of the box sitting in the hole without any resin, it's slightly lower than the route, but then if we were to add resin to the bottom of the box, it's going to lift that box up that 1.5 mil. So the top of the box itself will be flush with the blank, and the little flange on top will be higher, and we'll be able to sand that away at the end. So once we're comfortable with the depth of our router bit, we can put our router jig down and line that up. Now you're going to notice here that on the left side of the jig it says right, and on the right side of the jig it says left. That's because when we're marking for FCS2 boxes, we're actually marking for the inside edge of the fin or the fin slot, not the center of the fin tab or the fin slot. The only time we run a line through the very center or the guts of the fin tab or the fin slot is on the center box. If we're installing something like future boxes, all the boxes, whether they're on the rails, whether they're in the middle, quad setup, thruster setup, the shaper's mark will always be through the center of the fin slot. I know it sounds confusing as all hell, and that's because it is confusing as all hell, but certainly when you're hands-on and actually doing it yourself, it will make a little bit more sense. So I don't usually mask off for my rail routes with these jigs. They're pretty grippy and they are stable, they don't move too much. But when I'm routing through a stringer like this, I do mask down. So it's super tempting to just run masking tape from rail to rail over the top of the jig, but there's 2 problems with doing this. The first one is if you do it from rail to rail, the tape ramps up towards the jig from the rail, which means the jig can still move side to side if you have any kind of kickback or something goes wrong. So that's not ideal. And the second reason is if you mask from rail to rail over the top of the jig, the tape actually gets in the way of the router. You can't slide it around the jig easily because you're contending with tape edges. So you can see here what I've done is I've gone from the side edge of the jig straight down to the foam, and then like the letter L onto the blank itself. And that way there's no movement of the jig at all. It can't slide around because it's fixed down. So our rail boxes are pretty easy to route. We start with our router on an angle facing away from us. We turn the router bit on and then we slowly plunge the bit into the foam. Once we're fully in the foam and our router is nice and flat on the jig, I normally make 3 passes through the center. So I'll go top to bottom through the center and then slightly to the left and right of that center line before tracing my figure 8 around the jig, and then we should be done. Once you finish, you obviously want to turn the machine off, and before you remove the machine from the jig, you want to make sure the bit has stopped spinning. Don't remove it while the bit's still spinning. You're either going to mess up your blank, mess up the jig, or mess up your fingers. And the hottest tip I can give you for this video, this is the type of laminate trimmer I started with. It was an Azito. The Ryobis are similar. They're death traps. Very dangerous, very scary to use. Eventually, when the business made enough money, I was able to upgrade to a Makita, and I cannot describe to you the difference between the Azito and the Makita. I could almost use the Makita blindfolded, one finger on it, not even looking. It's so smooth, it feels 10 times safer. I can highly recommend the upgrade. Anyway, that's enough advertising for Makita. So now we want to put our dummy fin into a box and we want to sink that into the board, and I'm checking the depth here. So if it's not deep enough, if the box is sitting flush or higher than the blank, then we need to route a little bit deeper still. If you're satisfied with that depth, then you can remove it and on to the next one. So working against the stringer is a little bit different. It does take a little more time, especially depending on the sharpness of your bit. Essentially here I'm plunging it to the left side of the stringer, and I'm going to slowly wear away at the edge of the stringer, just moving that router piece up and down the side of it. Not trying to go all the way through the stringer, just wearing it away slowly. Once I'm about halfway through the stringer from the right hand to the left hand side, then I'm going to take all of the foam away from the left hand side, turn the router off, take it out, plunge it into the right hand side, and repeat the same step. So wear away the rest of the stringer. Once the stringer's all but gone, then I'm going to hit all the foam on the right hand side. If I can give you one hot tip for this part of the process, if there's little bits of stringer breaking off and flying around inside your route, it's going to damage the foam and the walls of your route. So if you see any sort of reasonably sized chunks of wood, stop the router, pull it out, remove the wood, and start again. I'm kind of lucky I got the vacuum set up here. Not lucky, I'm kind of smart with the vacuum set up here, so I don't run into that problem too often. But if there's anything that doesn't fit through the router or through the vacuum, it can still be a bit of an issue. Same deal, once we're routed, we're going to do a test fit. If your box doesn't fit, it's possible that you haven't quite taken the stringer down enough at either the tail end or the nose end, so you may have to reroute. But considering our jig is masked down, it's not a problem, it's not going to move. So keep doing those test fits. You might have to go a little bit deeper, you might have to go a bit longer towards the nose of the tail, just where the stringer is, but you'll get it in there eventually. Take your time, go slow, it ain't a race. Check your cantangles, this is very important. The more you can check your cantangles, the better. But at this point we're kind of noting, does the fin have to be masked a little bit out or a little bit in, or is it fine when we drop it in with the resin? And that's it folks, we are all routed, ready to drop them in, ready to glass them. That's going to be in the next video, so I'll release that at some stage. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you got something out of it. Thanks again for watching, and if you'd like to subscribe, I'd be very appreciative of that. And we'll catch you in the next one. Chee-hoo!